Hi, and welcome to an AGB podcast. Today I'm chatting with Sudhir Kale, all about the Great Resignation. Sudhir and colleague Brett Jones just this week released an article for us talking about the Great Resignation as it's happened around the world and its impact in particular on the Australian gaming industry, which I really found fascinating. Sudhir is a professional in the gaming industry for the last 15 years. He's a professor on marketing on 3 continents, and he's the CEO of Game Plan Consultants. Sudhir, welcome.
Thank you, Felix. And are you quitting your job?
Why do you say that?
Well, I thought you wanted to discuss the Great Resignation. So I
Oh, yeah.
Personal experience.
I may be outside of that 40% that are quitting their jobs this year. But just on that, that's a pretty staggering number. 40% of the world's employees are planning to quit within 2021.
Within the next 12 months, yeah.
Yeah, right. So between 21 and 22, is that what that statistic is?
That's correct, yeah.
And that's crazy. I guess the whole thing around this podcast I want to ask is why, right? We can see that the pandemic's obviously had done its toll on a lot of people and their psyche, but I want to get more insights on that. Sure. Why is 40% going to leave in the next 12 months?
All right. Yeah, just to put that into perspective, as you might have noticed, in Australia, we pretty much tend to follow what the US does, not just in terms of its foreign policy, not just in terms of its economy, but now even in terms of, the employment trends. And since April 2021, 15 million Americans have quit their job. As to your question about why, I would say that, crucial moments in life, such as financial crises or health crises or family crises, they always create an urge amongst people to want to examine their life. And what has happened now is people are looking at their life through the lens of the chaos that has just ensued, thanks to COVID-19. So I wouldn't say that, COVID is totally the cause of that, but I think it has created the platform with which people are really introspecting. And of course, the work from home and the flexible work hours and everything that happened during COVID did not help, because I think, frankly, some of the employees got too spoiled and they realized that, hey, it's, I can be as productive as when I'm at work. Why do I need to be at work? I can better deal with my family issues and my professional life when I have the hybrid model or the flexible model. And if the employer requires me to be at work, then there are plenty of other employers that will give me a job elsewhere. So I would say that this is the confluence of priorities, expectations, and passion. The priorities have changed. In fact, work-life balance is the number one priority of employees when they're applying for a new job in terms of the attraction factors. And it is the number 2 priority in terms of when people quit their job.
Right. I saw a report today, actually just a couple hours ago, where it was something around 63% of venues around Australia have reported having to pay staff significantly more just to attract or retain them. We've seen poaching from one hospitality venue to another. Just significant sign-on bonuses. I think there was one club that paid their bar manager a $10,000 sign-on bonus. So it definitely sounds like there is a massive shortage in hospitality workers. Can you give us a bit of insights into what that actually looks like from a customer's point of view, from a manager's point of view in these venues?
Well, I mean, from the customer's point of view, in many hospitality settings now, customers are told that there will be an hour and a half wait to have their food orders delivered. So obviously, that does not bode well for customer experience. And from the employer's perspective, I think, again, people are using the 20th century methods to solve 21st century problems. In other words, like you mentioned, throwing money at the problem. And that's not quite going to cut it. With the clubs industry, you referred to Australia, where majority of the revenues come from the clubs and not casinos. What you find is that those clubs that kept in contact with their employees during the 20 weeks, 25 weeks of closure, after the employees were laid off, they did not suffer as much as some of the other clubs, which totally forgot about their employees. And when things started to pick up, when the clubs opened again, said to their employees, now come back in.
Yeah.
Okay. So wherever the clubs have treated the club management has treated their employees as a relationship as opposed to a transaction.
Yeah, as human beings, as opposed to just an object that completes a task.
So those clubs have done much better. Also, as you know, most of the clubs tend to employ younger people in the service industry. And in Australia, something like 57% of all employees during the lockdown tried to acquire soft and technical skills. And 1/4 actually got formal qualifications in that regard.
Right.
So these people are not going to come back to their original job, which had shift work involved, which had where they were not really being treated very well. And another reason, like I said, work-life balance was number one reason for joining a particular company, and number two reason for quitting. And in terms of the number one reason for quitting, it was the relationship with the manager.
Right.
So, clubs lots of club managers like to blame, the government, they paid them money for nothing,
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
Job seeker and all of those things. But if the number one reason was the manager why people are quitting, then obviously something is wrong with the way the clubs structure their operations, and something is most definitely wrong in terms of the culture.
Right. But it seems like this Great Resignation, obviously hospitality is, maybe we're being hit the hardest. But, the whole relationship with managers and some of the other reasons behind them not wanting to come back. I mean, I feel like there's quite a few industries that would be fall foul to the same sort of problems, right?
Well, yeah. However, the impact has varied across industries. So, for example, in the IT industry, only about 12% of the employees said that they would stay with their current employer, whereas the national average was something like 50%. Right. So IT, healthcare, and the hospitality industry, these have been hit the hardest in terms of the number of resignations that they have received.
Right.
The other industries, manufacturing hasn't suffered actually at all.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yeah. What do you think that is?
I think people perceive there to be a greater stability in manufacturing jobs, because people still need to eat, they need to go to their grocery store and buy the products and all of those things. And somebody has to manufacture those things.
Someone has to make toilet paper, right?
Yeah, whereas, when clubs stayed closed for, 18 months or 2 years, I mean, that's okay. I mean, yeah, people were wanting to go back, but it was not a necessity.
Yeah, right.
And also there's more stability, there's more consistency, there's more regularity in a manufacturing job than there is in the service job. Also, like you said, I think the general consensus that customers have become a lot more rude and short-tempered as a result of the pandemic. And of course, you have seen that videos in the US where, people in an airplane, they try to beat up the stewards and the stewardesses and, become very violent. So I think this mental health is a huge issue all over the world. And I think that is also, it's not just the employees who are suffering, but also the customers might be suffering. And then after being closed for 18 months, 2 years, whatever it is, and then to attend to rude customers or, customers with very unpredictable behavior, that's going to be problematic.
Actually, that does also remind me of another article that we came across today, which was the MGM resorts utilizing VR in their recruitment fairs and in their job centers. And then one of the biggest purposes is to let people see what it's like to have the job. And in one particular instance, what dealing with a difficult customer actually
Right.
looks like, and they show it to them in virtual reality. And I just that goes to show that there's sometimes it's not as glamorous as what these job postings posted out to be. But in the end, they do it to reduce turnover, right? Because the worst thing is to train up somebody for a week or
Right.
2 weeks and then them quitting when they can't deal with that difficult customer. Didn't
Mm-hmm.
expect it to be like that. I mean, just from all this, it sounds like there is a lot of issues facing clubs and in the hospitality industry.
Yeah. Well, there are two issues
Mm.
when it comes to the MGM example, and I found that very interesting. The first is that, yes, they show the customers and the employees, or the employees dealing with difficult customers. However, what needs to come through is that human touch, the human touch on the part of the supervisor, the human touch on the part of the manager.
Right.
Okay, just to show the employee that, hey, you're going to have to deal with rude customers. That's fine. You might weed out a few. But then a better example of that is the online shoe company Zappos, which, they do less than 5% of their sales over the telephone. But no matter who the employee is, could be the hiring for CEO or CFO, or it might be a frontline employee, everybody has to work in their contact center for about 6 weeks.
Right.
And that's where they solve most of the customers' issues, Now, these people don't get paid much, on an average $8 to $12 an hour. However, Zappos pays their employees something like $4,000 to $5,000 if they want to quit within the first 2 or 3 months of joining the company.
Right.
And the reason for that is that, hey, again, $5,000 is a lot of money for somebody who's making $8, $10 an hour. But if the employee is disgruntled and they stay, then they're going to corrupt the company culture. And disengagement is very contagious.
Right.
Right now in Australia, only 9% of the employees are engaged. Being engaged means going over and beyond the call of duty. To solve the company's customer problems, or whatever the issues the company might be facing. And I think that's at an all-time low. And I think that's the harbinger also of the Great Resignation, in that people's heart is not in their job. So
and they're not in this. Their heart's not in it because of just that kind of quarter life, midlife crisis as a result of the pandemic, or are there other factors that's causing that?
Well, I think there are, again, one is there are multiple opportunities now. Like I said, 50% of the people are basically upskilled, right? So they don't want to go back to their original job. Other industries have opened up. So why would you want to engage in this, shift work, dealing with drunk gamblers who could be rude, and then, having your 30 minutes break in a break room that is infested with cockroaches and dirty microwaves and all of those things. So I think it's again this whole issue about the culture that's prevalent in most of the club industry. And I think the good way to start now, there needs to be that reset button to be pressed, is to start with a very clean, very attractive employee value proposition.
Right. What's that going to look like for the majority of clubs that weren't engaging with their customers? Like you mentioned, they're going to have to get the mop out, clean up their break room. They're going to have to, educate their managers to better engage with their employees. What else can they be doing?
Well, okay, so I think just we in the marketing jargon we call it internal marketing. Internal marketing is making the job and the job product using marketing-like techniques very attractive to prospective employees and current employees. And when will the job product be attractive to the employees? When it meets their basic needs. Okay, when it matches their expectations. So I think, in the past, there was this master-servant relationship, and people thought that, hey, if something is not working, pay them a bit more. Clearly, that is not working. Yes, money is important, but it's not the number one reason why people quit a company. It's not the number one reason why people join a company. Second is to provide a sense of purpose. Now, that might be hard to do in the case of a casino. I would like, because cynics are going to wonder, what social good you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You're basically breaking apart families and things like that. Whereas with clubs, at least, they're helping the local community, be it the football team or the RSL or, whatever it might be. These are not-for-profit organizations. So I think that connection needs to be made clearer to the employees. And that needs to come through in the employee value proposition. That, it's not all about pokey machines and, it's not all about cheap beer, that we are doing something meaningful for the community that's in our backyard. I think that sense of purpose has become a lot more salient now amongst employees than it was before COVID. And again, that is because of that existential question everybody is asking. What does life mean,
Yeah, what am I doing on this world?
Precisely.
Am I helping? Am I doing good? And I also just wanted to add as well, they were upskilling themselves during that period of lockdown.
That's right.
Which means that they want something, they want to feel like they're doing more, or they're learning, that they're that there's a career path ahead of them, right? I think that was one of the problems with hospitality, is the image was that it wasn't a viable career path, right?
Well, part of it is that, again, very few, there are some clubs like Ramsgate, which spend a lot of money on the professional development of their employees. And outside of the gaming industry, you might have heard that Combank is now offering over 2,000 free courses for the professional development of their employees. So, learning and development, that would be one strong attractor. Second would be flexibility. Now, I've spent a lot of time around clubs and, doing work for clubs. And sometimes this whole shift business is very brutal. And, there is a way to do it better. Outside of the club industry, the Gap stores in America have done that. So what they did was they selected 28 stores that was pitted against control stores. And in these 28 stores, they eliminated the power of the manager to cancel shifts up to 2 hours in advance, requiring employee schedules to be posted at least 2 weeks in advance. Number 3, guaranteeing the core group of employees at least 20 hours a week. Number 4, setting consistent start and end times for the shifts. And number 5, hiring extra people during surge times. Now, as a result of this, what it cost each store was $30,000, and the revenues went up by $3 million.
Wow. Yeah.
So 100 times the return on
very
investment.
worth it. Very worth it.
And yet, what tends to happen, unfortunately, both in clubs as well as in casinos, Felix, I don't know if you have noticed that, is that ironically, a lot of the top bosses, they start out as frontline employees. All right. If you look at the number of CEOs with a degree, there's not many. And that's fine. And we have some brilliant examples of that, their brains and their insights and their experience can basically beat any PhD out there. However, with a lot of them, the moment they get into a suit, they begin to develop this us versus them mentality. Okay. And that becomes very disruptive in terms of having smooth relationships between the employees and the management. When I get into any club for consulting, the first thing I insist on doing, regardless of what the issue is to have focus group with the employees. And the number one complaint about management is there is no communication and senior management does not value our opinions.
Yeah, top down, I say, you do.
That's right.
Kind of thing.
And that's clearly not working now.
I've seen more companies nowadays, maybe not in the hospitality space, but maybe more in that, esports and gaming space, but they have just fantastic facilities for their employees, free lunches. They
Yeah,
do, you can take as much annual leave as you want and require.
yeah.
You can have naps inside the company. I
Mhm.
mean, I can see why people would be seeing companies doing this and wondering, why am I doing this shift work at this club where I'm trying to earn like minimum pay to do this.
Well, that's kind of the old Google or Facebook model. And just this morning, I was talking to somebody whose daughter works at Facebook,
Mm,
and of course, the last 2 years or so, she's working from home. So he said, "Gosh, my major problem is now me and my wife, we have to cook at home because when she worked at Facebook, basically any kind of food she could also bring home to feed the rest of the family."
mm,
All right.
mm,
And then you look at some of the lunchrooms of some of the clubs. And I talked about the cockroach infestation and dirty microwaves and bad odors and things like that.
mm,
I mean, how do you expect the employee to spend their break over there and then to come back and be all excited about serving the customers?
mm.
Okay,
Yeah,
so, and that's what the logic behind the service profit chain is all about, that,
yeah.
employee engagement, employee experience leads to customer engagement and customer experience. That leads to customer loyalty, that leads to higher profitability, and that's like a virtuous cycle.
Just last thing,
Yeah,
mental
sure.
health. I wanted to cover that. We said we would at the start. Tell us what you're seeing on this mental health side of things. Like, what do clubs need to be doing in this respect?
Mhm. Well, 1 out of 6 employees is supposedly having mental health issues. That's more than 15% of all your entire workforce. And, that can be not only dangerous for the employees themselves, it also raises issue about the safety of the customers and the safety of the fellow employees. So, and thus far, we have not created a culture within most organizations where people can talk about this freely. People can discuss these issues with their coworkers, or they feel safe enough to go to their manager and saying, hey, I may be going through this particular issue.
Mm,
And the organizations are not really devoting enough resources to tend to these issues. That being the case, a lot of the things are being swept under the rug. And that can lead to also people quitting, not wanting to go. We talked about the low level of engagement earlier, higher accidents at work. So that's the vicious cycle as opposed to the virtuous cycle that we talked about earlier. So I think that needs to be, mental health needs to be one of the top 3 issues,
yeah.
or top 3 priorities in terms of the club's agenda, or in terms of the list, in terms of to do as far as the culture is concerned. So it should be mental health, it should be respect for the employees, and the third should be creating a culture that basically incorporates the expectations, the changed expectations of the employees.
What does it look like if you say a club needs to put more resources into mental health? Are we talking about hiring a counselor or someone that can actually help them through some of these issues? Or is it training the managers to deal with issues like this?
Yeah, the first is just the basic training of the managers, how to detect whether the employee has a problem, how to talk to the employees, because that should be the first port of call. Yeah, second would be a counselor. Third would be to provide activities at the workplace. It could be yoga, it could be meditation, it could be exercise facilities, or it could be provide them free passes to a gym, whatever it may be, so that the tension can get diffused. And lots of enlightened organizations are doing that. Some companies actually have state-of-the-art meditation centers and Buddhist monks, available on call to teach their employees, how to resolve stress and issues that are causing them problems.
Yeah. So from all this, I bottom line, right? Treat employees like they're human beings. Treat
Yes.
them like they are the valuable assets to your company as they are, right? What else would you say?
Well, I mean, a lot of companies can do without a CEO. Nobody can do without a frontline employees. All right. So, I mean, you don't have frontline employees, you cannot open your business. And you see, that's like, I think we have had that conversation before, Felix, when the COVID-19 crisis hit Macau, companies like Galaxy paid 48,000 US for their employees to quit. All right. So if you can afford to pay that kind of money to have your employees quit, then why not spend some money on customer retention, do a 360-degree analysis of what the expectations and the needs of the employees are, be a bit more creative and be a bit more employee-centric when it comes to assigning shift work, like we saw in the case of Gap. So it's not like you're spending money, it's you're making money by making life easier on your employees. So don't look at it as an expense. I think wherever you treat employees better, it's always a win-win proposition.
Well, on that, Sudhir, just wanted to say thank you very much for this very insightful chat. Wish we could keep talking about this, and maybe we will after we turn off this podcast, Sudhir. But thank you again for your time.
Hey, my pleasure, and love talking to you as always.